Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of The Message. I'm your host, the Knowledge King. We'll spend this next hour with one purpose in mind, and that one purpose is delivering the message that God is Almighty. Everything that ever was, is now, or ever will be, is a piece of God. Everything that ever was, is now, ever will be, was made by God. Everything that ever happened is happening right now or ever will happen was made to happen by God. God is a master plan for all time and all creation. God is Almighty. The message is brought to you by, it's produced by the Society of Knowledge. The Society is an interdenominational ministry. Our members come from various different religious and spiritual backgrounds. We have various different religious and spiritual beliefs. Although we come from different backgrounds and have different beliefs, there's one belief that we share. There's one piece of knowledge that we hold in common, and that's the knowledge that there is a being. By no matter what name we may have been taught to call that being, by no matter what name we may have come to know that being, whether that name be God, Allah, Yahweh, Jesus, Jehovah, Buddha, nature, the universe, by no matter what name, we know that there is a being that possesses not some of the power, not most of the power, but all of the power. That's the reason we do the show, and the only reason we do the show. And that's to deliver the message that that being that personally I call God, that being is indeed Almighty. Today is September the 19th, 2024. I remind you that fact because tonight, as we are on most Thursdays, we are live. And I remind you that fact because this show is an open discussion. It's a two-way conversation. For those of you that are joining by Facebook, I invite you to join the conversation by typing your comments in the comments section, and I'll do my best to read it out over the air. If there's something that's going on in your church, your mosque, your masjid, your synagogue, your temple, your place of worship, and you want to let the world know about it, then place your comments, place that information in the comments section, and I'll do my best to read it out over the air. If there's something that's going on in your nonprofit organization, and you want to let the world know about it, I invite you to do the same thing. Place the information in the comments section. I'll do my best to read it out over the air. And as you see, from time to time, I'll turn my head. I'm looking at our monitor to see if there are comments, and I'll read those out. Let's see, I'll read those comments out over the air. And let's see, we have someone that has joined us by Facebook, and I'm trying to see, I don't see your name hasn't popped up, but I see that we do have a viewer on Facebook. So welcome this evening. And just write a comment, just say hello. And that way it should pop up and I'll be able to see it and acknowledge it. Let's go on with the order of our show. And the order of it is that we will have our announcements. And let's see if I can pull that up. What you see on your screen is what I recited earlier, and that is our acknowledgement. We acknowledge that God is indeed Almighty. We'll have our announcements, then our religious spiritual discussion, and as I say tonight, our discussion topic, I didn't say it, but our discussion topic tonight is metaphysics. And after that, we will have our words of inspiration. What you see on your screen, that is our main website, and that's www.godsalmighty.org. I invite you, I encourage you to lock that website into your web browser, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can visit that site, and there are links to all of our social media platforms. We have a religious discussion blog, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And as we go on, we are getting more and more proficient at utilizing the social media platforms. And we encourage you to visit those platforms, leave comments, share information, share knowledge on all of our platforms. And if you have some suggestions on how we can improve our platforms, we invite those comments and those suggestions also. If you'd like to volunteer to help us with our social media ministry, I encourage you to just contact us, and we'll be able to do that, also get you involved. You don't have to wait to get involved. You can get involved right now by hitting that like button, hitting that share button, and starting a watch party. And for some reason tonight, it's not allowing me to see those of you that have logged in on social media through Facebook. But again, if you hit the just put a comment. All right. Sister Connie, good evening. All right. Cousin Welly, good evening. Good evening. Okay, so it's finally letting me see some of those that are watching on social media. Missed you the past couple of weeks, Cousin Welly. Hope you're doing okay, doing well, and try to make it by this weekend. The past couple of weeks have been pretty busy. I've reached out, so hopefully within the next, this upcoming weekend, we'll be able to, as we say, we'll be able to hook up. We're going to scroll through this pretty quick. I invite you to come fellowship with us in the city of New Orleans every Sunday at 10 a.m. We fellowship at 1861 Abundant Street here in the city of New Orleans. We're going to have to work something out because we see that we get more views on social media when we're not inside our center, the fellowship center. We did a remote, a pop-up church a couple of weeks ago, and had tremendous viewers online. So we're going to start doing more of that, and we're just going to have to coordinate it to put up some signs or some notices so that those that will come over there on Abundant Street, they'll know that we're at another location, and they'll be able to come join us on site, out in the community. Right, the Crowley Center of the Society, presided over by Messenger Frank Abdullah Andrews Jr. Hopefully, Messenger Frank will join us tonight through Zoom. In the past week or two, Messenger Frank has been joining and giving us some insight by joining us through Zoom. Messenger Ryan King, presiding messenger of the Lafayette Center of the Society. Messenger T. Narvell, presiding messenger of the North Carolina Center. And Messenger Corey Levier, presiding messenger of the Opelousas Center. And a shout out, belated happy birthday to Messenger Levier. I just found out, it was either today or yesterday, that I found out that he recently celebrated a birthday. So he's another one of those September babies. And, we have a whole lot of September babies that we've given shout outs to and acknowledged and wished them well wishes on their birthday. My wife, we just celebrated her birthday last week. So it's, I say a lot of September birthdays. One of my sons, September birthday. A couple of sister-in-laws, September birthdays. A brother-in-law, September birthdays. A lot of September birthdays. So let's see, September is the 9th month of the year. Okay, so that means all them September birthdays, their parents, they were conceived in December. I guess that's Christmas presents, I guess. Oh, all right. A shout out to my sister-in-law. I just said that a couple sister-in-laws born in this month. Now today is my sister-in-law, Helen, better known as Pop. Happy birthday, sister-in-law or Auntie Pop, happy birthday. And let's say a whole lot of September birthdays. Give a shout out to Bishop Wendy Mee, who's a member of the Society of Knowledge, and he's also a bishop, the presiding priest or pastor at Imani Temple number 28 here in the city of New Orleans. And the Imani Temple number 28 is a part of the African American Catholic congregation. Imani Temple number 49, located in Lafayette, Louisiana, presided over by Archbishop John W. Milton. He's the pastor of Imani Temple number 49 and also the Archbishop. So he is the head, the leader of the entire African American Catholic congregation. And they have temples here in the United States and also on the African continent. Previously recorded episodes of The Message can be watched on YouTube at our YouTube channel, and that's DNK Messenger. Yeah, we're going to get into our discussion, our religious discussion, and we're reminded, as always, the importance of knowledge. And it's so important that the book of Hosea says that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. The book of John says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And we're reminded in 1 Thessalonians to prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Our discussion topic tonight is metaphysics. Metaphysics. Let me take that off the screen. Let me confess something. Preparing for tonight's discussion wore me out. It really wore me out. And you might be able to detect that I'm a little bit low energy this evening. And that's because, studying and preparing for this discussion, it wore me out. I do a lot of studying, and I prepare for every show. I prepare for our fellowship on Sundays. But today rather, just wore me out. And this is a topic of metaphysics that just wore me out. And when you study that topic, and I can't even scratch the surface of metaphysics this evening. And I have invited a couple of folks to participate in the discussion tonight, and I didn't get a reply from them as far as folks that have an interest. That actually one guy has written a book. He's a lecturer. He goes about the country lecturing on the topic of metaphysics. He's written a book, and I think it was a bestseller book. But this is such a complex topic, and this area of knowledge goes back to Aristotle, Plato, and even beyond those philosophers. And I'm going to read a little bit of information. I don't have a lot of slides tonight. I like to put slides up. Don't have a lot of slides tonight because this topic did not lend itself to these graphics and images. So I'm going to just read this out. Some of us may not have any idea about what metaphysics is. So I'm going to read some stuff that some knowledge that I gained. And I'm going to start out with the overall definition of metaphysics. An overall definition of metaphysics. Just as physics deals with the laws that govern the physical world, okay, so we know about physics. Okay, it was one of Newton's first law of physics or whatever and that's the law of gravity. Observing it's said that he saw an apple fall from a tree, and that's the first law of physics, the law of gravity. And then they have other laws, but those are physics, and that's dealing with the physical world, observing the physical world that can be touched and seen, heard and smelled, the physical world. And as science has progressed, that science of physics, that definition of physics really is not accurate anymore. Because when I talked about being able to see and touch, there are areas of physics that concern things that cannot be seen. Things such as what scientists call quarks and particles and boson. Hey, those are not abstract terms. Those actually physically exist. You can't see them with your eye. You can't see them with the microscope, the most powerful microscope. You can't see it, none of that. But they exist because scientists have learned through trial and error and observation and experimentation, have learned how to detect these things, learned that they are real, even though they cannot be seen, even though they cannot be measured with a microscope or a ruler or anything else like that. They actually exist. And when you start getting that deep into physics, and I'm going to throw out a term here now, and then I'll just throw that out, and you can Google it for yourself and figure out what I'm talking about. But when you get into the study of physics, the sub-branch of physics called quantum physics, that's where you start getting into what I'm speaking about as far as particle physics and bosons and quarks and particles and things such as that. And when you get that deep into physics, you really start getting to the point where you're crossing over into metaphysics. Okay? And you'll understand hopefully a little bit more what I'm talking about by the end of tonight. And this is a definition that comes from the Merriam-Webster dictionary of the term metaphysics. Just as physics deals with the laws that govern the physical world, such as those of gravity or the properties of waves, metaphysics describes what is beyond physics. Now, that's what Merriam-Webster said. My contention, my understanding, my knowledge is that metaphysics is not the study of something beyond physics, but it's just the study of things that we have not been able to explain, physical properties, properties of physical, we cannot explain using traditional physics. So it's not beyond, it's not something hocus pocus. Okay, metaphysics, but the definition that you hear me reading right now, that is an accepted traditional definition of metaphysics. The nature and origin of reality, okay, describing what is beyond physics. The nature and origin of reality itself, the immortal soul, and the existence of a supreme being. Opinions about these metaphysical topics vary widely, since what's being discussed can't be observed or measured or even truly known to exist. So most metaphysical questions are still as far from a final answer as they were when Plato and Aristotle were asking them. Okay? So metaphysics, it said the nature and origin of reality itself. The nature and origin of reality. What is real? Are you real? Am I real? Is the world real? Is it all just a dream? And if it's real, what is the definition of reality? Okay. Is it some AI generated computer image or computer generated avatar? Okay. These are starting to get into questions about metaphysical. And guess what? The science of physics, not metaphysics, the science of physics asks those same questions. There's a fellow, a very, very, very famous fellow, who wasn't dealing with metaphysics. He was a scientist in the field of physics. All right. And that fellow's name was Einstein. Einstein, y'all might have heard of him. And Einstein, in all of his studies, all of his calculations dealing with physics, the physical world, dealing with science, he came up with concepts such as the theory of time. That concept that we know as time, that we measure as far as the past, present, and the future, that all that was relative. And there are theories in physics, now this sounds wild, but there are theories in physics, not metaphysics, in physics, that the past, the present, and the future all exist at the same time. Now, how can that be? The past, something that's happened already, existing in some dimension as what's going on right now, and in that same dimension exists what's going to happen an hour from now, a year from now, 1,000 years from now, all rolled into one. Now that's starting to sound metaphysical right there. The nature of time itself. Okay? But this is touching the surface of metaphysics and the definition of metaphysics. It really goes, the translation, that which comes after physics. Okay, let me read this out a little bit more. Okay, that definition that I read just now, that was a definition that came from Merriam-Webster. Okay, the dictionary people. So now let me read some more stuff here. Many general and abstract topics belong to the subject of metaphysics. It investigates the nature of existence. That's pretty deep, existence. How you know, a lot of us don't sit around all day thinking about existence, you know. Existence, what does it mean? Do I exist? Do I not exist? Some folks go crazy trying to think about all that kind of stuff. You know, and now you might understand what I was talking about, how this wore me out. Just studying for tonight just wore me out. The existence, right? You sit down, you know, think about existence, the nature of existence. What does it mean to exist? Right? It investigates the nature of existence, the features all entities have in common, in their division into categories of being. Categories of being. See that word being? B-E-I-N-G, being. I'm a being. I'm a human being. Other things are beings. This piece of paper is a being. It's not a human being. It's a being. And being, in this case, being defined as existing. See that? We get those kind of discussions right there. An influential contrast is between particulars, and that's in bold, particulars, which are individual, unique entities, like a specific apple, and universals, which are general, repeatable entities that characterize or describe particulars, like the color red. So if I said a red car, car being a particular being, a particular being, a particular thing, a particular entity. And when I put that adjective in there, red, that is a universal because red can be a descriptor of a car, an apple, a box, okay? So now I got kind of give you a little bit flavor about this metaphysics, okay? Different types of beings, particular beings, universal beings. Go on, you know, this stuff gets deeper. Modal metaphysics examines what it means for something to be possible or necessary. The nature of space, time, and change is also discussed by metaphysicians. A closely related issue concerns the essence of causality and its relation to the laws of nature. Other topics include how mind and matter are related, whether everything in the world is predetermined, and whether there is free will. Hold on a second now. See, now we're dipping into religion, right? Predestination, free will, aren't those concepts that are used in religious discussions? Now we see those concepts being used in the study of metaphysics. Okay? So now we were, a minute ago, we were talking about the relationship between physics and metaphysics. And now we see being pulled into the discussion is religion and spirituality. Metaphysics is the study of the most general features of reality, including existence, objects and their properties, possibility and necessity, space and time, change, causation, and the relation between matter and mind. It is one of the oldest branches of philosophy. One of the oldest branches of philosophy. So metaphysics is not something that's some kind of hocus pocus, fly by night. It's a philosophy. It's taught and studied in the most prestigious universities in the world. It was taught and studied by folks like Aristotle, Plato. So when we're talking about metaphysics, it's not some foolishness. All right. And that last information I read, that comes from Wikipedia. Okay? Now, this comes from another source here. The idea of God. The idea of God. And this is actually coming from Encyclopedia Britannica. All right. The claim that there is a God raises metaphysical questions about the nature of reality and existence. Now we start to get deep into this here. Religion, spirituality, and metaphysics. Metaphysics being a science, okay, a philosophy, a science. And now we got religion, the concept of God, a metaphysical concept. The claim that there is a God raises metaphysical questions about the nature of reality and existence. In general, it can be said that there is not one concept of God, but many, even among monotheistic traditions. Not one concept of God, but many. The Abrahamic religions are theistic. God is both the creator of the world and the one who sustains it. Theism, with its equal stress on divine transcendence of the universe and eminence within it, constitutes a somewhat uneasy conceptual midpoint between deism and pantheism. Deist conceptions of the divine see God as the creator of a universe that continues to exist without his intervention under the physical impulses that he first imparted to it. So put in some plain language, that God created the world. He's not a part of it. He created it and is just moving along on its own according to some plan that God created. The physical impulses that he first imparted to it. In pantheism, God is identified with the universe as a whole. God is identified with the universe as a whole. Pantheism, everything that was, is, and ever will be, is a piece of God. Theism itself has numerous sub-varieties, such as occasionalism, which holds that the only real cause in the universe is God. Thus, all other causes are simply signs of coincidence and conjunction between kind of events occurring within the created order. Isn't this kind of making you tired just listening to this? I was saying when I was studying and putting all this stuff together, man, it wore me out. For example, heat is not what causes the water in a tea kettle to boil, but it's simply what uniformly occurs before the water boils. God himself is the cause of the boiling. Okay, that's out of Britannica. Metaphysics and religion are both concerned with understanding reality, but they approach the subject in different ways. Metaphysics, the study of the fundamental nature of reality, including its underlying principles and causes. Religion, a set of beliefs and speculations about the nature of existence and the relationship between humans and a higher power. Religious dogmas are propositions that have metaphysical significance. The relationship between metaphysics and religion has been discussed for centuries. For example, the claim that there is a God raises metaphysical questions about the nature of existence and reality. Now, you heard me earlier read about those famous philosophers of Plato and Aristotle. Those are what we call Western philosophers. Okay? European. But guess what? There is a concept of metaphysics in Africa, in ancient Africa. And one of the things that it not upsets me, and I'm no longer surprised, and I've said this many times publicly on this show and in other public arenas, that there's a great bias in education, a great prejudice in education, racial and cultural bias and prejudice. And it is highlighted even as I was preparing for tonight's show, that bias and prejudice jumped out and just slapped me inside my head. When we speak about Western philosophy, when we speak about the Greeks and the Romans, we give it names like metaphysics. But when we speak about African philosophies, we give it pejorative names, like animism. All right. Negative connotations. Animism, like something that is just humorous. And I'm going to read something that, as I did research into the African metaphysics, this is what came up. In ancient African metaphysics, the central concept is often considered to be a vital force or a force of being that permeates everything, connecting the physical and spiritual realms, where reality is seen as a dynamic interplay between various forces and beings, all existing in a hierarchical structure with interconnectedness being key. This is often expressed through the idea of ancestors and the deep relationship between humans and nature, with no strict separation between the material and spiritual worlds. So that description of African metaphysics, it's a distinction between the verbiage, the words that are used to speak about the metaphysics coming out of Europe, coming out of Plato and Aristotle. But when you get beyond that verbiage, you find that same concept. And when you do your studying, you find that those folks, Aristotle, Plato, a lot of the studying that they did, the knowledge that they gained, that they spread, was knowledge that originated on the African continent. And that's, listen, there's no wonder in that. Okay? There's no wonder in that fact when you stop and think that man, hominids, man existed or has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. When you think about that, and you think about the development of knowledge and the passing on of knowledge and the spreading of knowledge, when you think about that, it's no wonder that a lot of the knowledge that we've been taught originated on the European continent, a lot of that knowledge actually came from the African continent. And I say it's no wonder because science, and I'm not talking about metaphysics or nothing else like that, I'm talking about science. Okay? Archaeology, anthropology, paleontology, science teaches that mankind, Homo sapiens, originated in or on the African continent. So for those hundreds of thousands of years that mankind, Homo sapiens, existed on the African continent, they were gaining knowledge. Okay? They were gaining knowledge. They were gaining knowledge that, well, after so long, that thing up in the sky is going to go down and it's going to get dark, and we ain't going to be able to see which way to go. Okay? They were gaining knowledge that, well, when it starts getting dark, we need to find a way to light a fire so we'll be able to see at night. They were gaining knowledge. Mankind was gaining knowledge and gaining knowledge about those basic physical things over hundreds of thousands of years, gaining that knowledge, and had so much time and intelligence that they were able to gain knowledge about other things that nowadays we might call metaphysics. Gaining knowledge about things that nowadays we might call quantum physics. Gaining knowledge about the various constellations throughout the universe. Gaining knowledge about how energy flows and energy works. Gaining knowledge about those things. So it's no wonder when we find out that the actual concepts coming from the African continent are the kernel of what those philosophers, Aristotle and Plato, were talking about. Now, I'm going to touch on something, and this is something that I'm going to close out on this. What I said earlier about metaphysics being the study of things beyond physics. What I said earlier is that the Bible talks about metaphysics, but it puts it in the phraseology and in the terms of religion. The Bible speaks about Jesus doing what? Something metaphysical. Turning water into wine. Talks about Jesus calming the seas, walking on water, raising the dead, healing the sick. And not only Jesus, but the Bible tells us thousands of years before Jesus, it tells us about Moses crossing over the Red Sea, Aaron stretching his rod out, Red Sea opened up. Tells us about other metaphysical events Pharaoh's magicians, throwing their staffs down and turning into snakes and serpents. Yeah. The Bible, that's all stuff in the Bible. See, we call it, the terminology that we use, we say miracles. And when it's Moses and his folks doing it, and Jesus, we call it miracles. Okay? When it's Pharaoh and his priests doing it, we call it magic, sorcery. And the Bible talks all about sorcery. Talks all about that. Now, I'm just going to take and put this out there. Right now, you're able to watch me live. Okay? I'm not there physically in your house or wherever you are, but you can see me, you can hear me. Okay? The very second I say something, you can hear it. That's not magic. Right? That's not sorcery. That's not metaphysical. It's science. Okay? Physics. Right? Human beings using a scientific method have figured out how to harness and manipulate electricity, how to harness and manipulate waves, radio waves, and all other kind of electronic waves, microwaves, how to send all that stuff through the air, cell phones, cell towers, internet, all the rest of that. It's nothing metaphysical, it's physical. But 1,000 years ago, let's go back to the thing about Star Trek. In Star Trek, you remember Star Trek? Those of you that's old enough to know about Star Trek, Star Trek fly all over the universe. Okay, the Starship Enterprise, I think that was the name of it. Okay, Captain Kirk, and Mr. Spock, and Zulu, and all the rest of them fly all around the universe, and they would come to different planets. And some of those planets had people who look just like Earth people, but they might be, somewhere back in the 1930s and 1900s or 1800s. And the people on this Enterprise, Captain Kirk, it's something like, beam me down, Scotty. And they beam him down, just like that. From the starship, from the Enterprise to the surface of the planet. And they'd be there on the surface of the planet. And the folks that were there on the planet, not being as advanced as Captain Kirk and his folks, they see stuff like what Captain Kirk would do, and they would think that's some kind of witchcraft or something. Right? So just like right now, if somebody could beam us back to the 1920s or back to the 1800s, and the folks will sit there and see us doing this kind of stuff, talking to each other on our cell phones and all the rest of that, man, they would say we were sorcerers or witches or something. But it wasn't because we had any knowledge about, any sorcery or anything. It's just through science. And we had advanced knowledge about science. Now, this has been a long explanation, and I've said all that because when we talk about the study of metaphysics, we are studying about the deepest parts of science, and that's reality, existence, the relationship of time, And when you start getting that deep into understanding and knowing who you really are and what we really are, there are things that we're going to learn along the way that can be used and implemented in the physical world. The same way we learned about vaccines that could stop and prevent diseases, it wasn't any hocus pocus. It was science. And the deeper we get into the study of metaphysics of who we really are, the relationship of time and change and distance, what we really are, the byproducts of that can be phenomenal. And I said all that because one aspect of metaphysics, and when you hear people talk about metaphysics, sometimes they'll say, oh, that's some hocus pocus you're talking about. That's some occult stuff that you're talking about. I beg to differ. There's some knowledge that we can learn about ourselves and our abilities and our capabilities and who we are and what we really are. Some knowledge that we can gain. And there are some people that claim to have gained that knowledge. The Bible talks about that hidden knowledge, knowledge that's not to be shared with everybody. Don't throw your pearls before the swine. Knowledge that some people just not capable of comprehending. The Bible speaks about that hidden knowledge. And I dare to say that metaphysical knowledge. The Kabbalah speaks about that hidden knowledge. There are other religious and spiritual books that speak about that hidden knowledge. The Freemasons speak about that hidden knowledge. The Rosicrucians speak about that hidden knowledge. And one of the oldest books that there is, the Book of Going Forth by Day, better known as the Book of the Dead, speaks about that hidden knowledge. And I'm here to tell you that it's not magic. It's knowledge that's been gained by those folks that were predestined, that were created to have that knowledge of things that we might call metaphysical, but in reality, it's knowledge about who we really are and what we really are and what this whole existence really is, the interconnectedness of all things. And as you saw earlier when we first started out, that was on the screen, the acknowledgement of the society of knowledge that everything that ever was, is now, ever will be, is a piece of God, a piece of the one. There's no you and me. It's one thing, one being, one body. Well, I'm going to close out now because it's that time. And that's something, how that metaphysics brought us all full circle to where we started. And that is that there's a force that I personally call God. That force, that being, is indeed almighty. Until we meet again here on the message next Thursday, may that being, may that force, may God Almighty bless you and yours with peace. Hope to see you here again next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. And hope to see you Sunday. If you're in the New Orleans area, Sunday, 10 a.m. at 1861 Abundant Street. Till we meet again, may God Almighty bless you and yours with peace.